I'm Felina.
And I'm Summer.
And you are listening to Broken Broken.
Because we're both.
The podcast about living your best life by getting real.
What's up, broken people? This is Felina.
And this is Summer.
And today we have...
Leah. Let's see, what else do you want to know? Probably my family information, I guess. So
yeah, let's start there.
So my wife Rose and I have been together for almost 20 years. I know your feelings on marriage, Summer.
It's fine.
We have 3 siblings who we fostered and adopted, who are my oldest, Denasia. It will be 17 next month.
I cannot believe that, by the way.
What's up?
I cannot believe that, by the way.
I know. It's very weird.
She was like a toddler
Diamond,
when we
our
started talking.
middle child will be, Diamond will be 16 in March.
Aww.
Typical middle kid. I always have to think about her birthday. And then Darius just turned 13, so I'm freaking out a little bit here.
The teenagers, man.
All teenagers. My baby boy is now a young man.
Where do you live?
So we live in Rochester, New York. I've been here with my wife for 20 years. I actually relocated for her. I grew up in New York City.
That's sweet.
It is. She had,
You're like, I know.
That was convincing.
She had family here.
Like, oh, yeah.
I don't really have ties to my family, so it was a no-brainer at that point.
Yeah.
Typical GLBT love story, meet, and then like a week later you're living together.
We joke about Native couples do that all the time too. It's like, hi, nice to meet you. Move in with me, and then we'll learn about each other.
No one ever wants to do that with me. I've tried.
Well, me either, but it's because I have 800 children, so who wants
Even
that?
when I didn't have kids, no one wanted to just couple with me, man. I was like, let's just jump in.
For us, we figure it's cheaper to stay together at this point than deal with child support. So
definitely, especially when there's 3, right?
Right, just keeping it real.
Now, you guys are also a multi-ethnic, transracial family,
We
right?
are the colors of Benetton in my house. So I am typical white bread, mixed with everything. But my wife was raised in Hawaii and is Samoan and Japanese, and our children are all African American.
I like it. I like the rainbow. I see the rainbow visual in my head right now. I like it.
It freaks people out because they see these, black kids running around and then they find out they have Japanese last names.
That confuses people, huh?
Right. As do I, so that makes people do a double take as well now,
right.
That's her last name. At the kids' request, interestingly enough. They requested we get married when it became legal in New York State.
Well, I feel like it would be did you guys do a second, were you able to do a second parent adoption, not being married there?
So we we got lucky with our adoption lawyer. He had done one of the first lesbian adoptions in New York State, so he just pushed it through, so we didn't have any issues.
But you guys weren't married at the time, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, you
we
can't
were
do that here.
Civil domestic partnership.
Yeah. See,
for health insurance purposes.
In Oklahoma, if you're not legally married, you cannot both adopt. It's really backwards and really hard.
Yeah, that sucks for a number of reasons. Although I've always said from the beginning with adoption that there should be, the birth certificate should remain unchanged and there should be a parenting certificate. But that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've touched that a couple times on a couple episodes.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's the strangest thing to look at my daughter's birth certificates and they act like, and they say my name with the address that I lived at the time of the adoption, not even where so if you were to look at all of our records, none of it makes sense.
Right.
And it is pretending none of their realities actually happened.
Yeah, whole erasing
we actually
the past.
have photocopies of their original birth certificates somewhere in our house, which I don't even remember how I managed to get them, but I finagled them from their foster care worker and kept copies.
Nice. I managed to get both the girls too, because in Oklahoma you can, as the foster parent, request a copy from the vital records yourself. So I ordered they each have certified copies of their original birth certificates.
Yeah, I know there was a recent change in New York State, so that may not be an issue anymore, but I wanted them to have that original information. Although now, they see their biological parents now.
Oh, they
They also
do?
have older brothers who moved back in with their biological parents, and their oldest brother has a baby.
So how many siblings are there?
So there are 5 full siblings. We've got the youngest 3. The 2 boys went through a couple of different homes and were adopted, but they were older, so they had more of a relationship with their biological parents at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So they went back and forth a few times, and they are now, to my knowledge, living with their biological parents. But as I said, Daniel, the oldest, has a 9-month-old daughter who was actually just at our house for my youngest, for Darius's birthday over the weekend. So we're sort of, I don't know, aunties, honorary grandparents. I have no idea. This is like all new territory.
I
for
kind
us.
of love it.
Open adoption gets a little complicated
I
sometimes.
don't know.
but
It
I
kind
think
of
it's
makes
great.
me happy. Yeah.
It wasn't open when we first adopted for various reasons, but over the time, Rochester, New York is a city, but it's almost like a small town.
Mm-hmm.
They have family here. They all of our children and their older brothers all resemble each other strongly. So we've gotten stopped by strangers before who know the kids because they recognize them. And, with social media and our kids doing more on their own, there's only so much we can restrict. Not that we want to, we just want to make sure everybody's safe.
Right.
So these relationships sort of naturally developed, and we just kind of sit back and let it happen and just make sure that if there are safety concerns, we talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we've always tried to help them when everybody was younger, visit with their brothers. We kept that line open as much as possible on our end. And now, we want them to maintain those relationships as, these children, they're still children in my mind. All of them are now having their own children.
Right.
Wow.
But it's definitely not something they talk about in like fostering classes or adoption at all.
No. They breeze right past all of that.
So
Right.
did you guys meet due to this topic?
Yeah, we met online
Right.
when I was researching. I think before my older daughter was placed with us.
Probably. I don't know. I
think
feel like I've known people forever that I've never met, so it's very weird.
Yeah, because it was her, and we've had Jen on before, and around the same time. So it was they helped me learn a lot before, because I tried to learn as much as I could before we accepted a placement. So learn about transitioning kids over and try to make it reduce the trauma for them as much as possible.
As much as you can, yeah, because they've probably already been through plenty. Yeah.
I mean, just the act of removal
Right.
is extremely traumatic for a child.
So for our girls, they were 2 and 1 when they were placed with us, and we were actually on a break from taking foster placements due to having lost a long-term placement. And I don't know how it is in other areas, but here they used to have people whose job was just to find placements for kids. And they called me and said, well, we have these 2 girls, they need a placement. Rosa was out of town on a trip. We didn't have anything for babies at that point. I said, sure, we can take them, but we need a couple of days to get everything together. Well, that turned into Rosa was on a plane, and the family they were with dropped them off. Like, it was like Friday afternoon, and said, we're done. And keeping this is like these are 2 toddlers.
Right.
And so they called me like, well, we can take them to an emergency placement, or we can drop them off. I said, well, drop them off, but I need whatever supplies they need. And, Rosa gets off the plane, and this was before, Wi-Fi, and, I'm like, surprise, they're here.
Oh my
How did
gosh.
she
what can
respond to
you-
that?
What can you do? And so that's how we ended up with 2. Our original plan was to foster, possibly adopt one, and then possibly try to have one using a donor. And that turned into 3, in a late term miscarriage for myself. And then at that point, I was pregnant at the same time that their mom was pregnant with Darius, and we didn't know it at the time.
Right, because
Oh,
he was
wow.
a surprise, right?
He was a surprise. He was born on, I believe, Friday, and we were notified on Monday. And at that point, he was born in July. My son was due, my original due date was May, but I delivered like right after Christmas, and at that point it wasn't viable. So we were still mourning
Right.
and dealing with all of that, and then here he comes, and we initially said no, and it ended up being, if we don't take him, they're already separated from their older siblings. We're what happens.
Right.
And so obviously he's here. But there was a lot of, back and forth and a lot of, I had to deal with a lot of my emotional stuff as well
Yeah.
as dealing with, he went through some pretty serious withdrawal when he first came as well. And so there was, he didn't sleep for like 6 months at night. And so there I am, they say, sleep when the baby sleeps. Well, you can't do that when you have two toddlers running around.
Right. It doesn't work.
And Rosa was my wife. I was a stay-at-home foster parent at that point. Diamond, our second child, went through some pretty serious attachment issues. Like I couldn't leave the room if we weren't home. So I became an attachment parent by necessity and an at-home parent. So Rosa was on the road making the money, and I was home and sleep deprived. So I have no memory of like the first 6 months of his life.
Yeah, sleep deprivation will definitely do that.
Yeah.
It does some awful things to you.
And now the youngest is 13.
Yep, 13, 15, and almost 17, and I'm not old enough to have any of them.
You get to sleep now?
Most of the time, you got to yell at them now to turn down the music or, wash a dish, but they wipe their own butts now, so, there's a trade-off.
That helps.
That's always
That's
nice.
always helpful when they can wipe their own butts.
I'm not trying to start over again, like, no more babies, and they're not having any babies for a while. So they better not.
That's what I keep telling my teenagers. I'm like, look, I am done raising babies. So you better make sure that does not happen until you're out of my house, because I am done.
Right,
Done having
exactly.
babies.
No more babies.
I only have the one, and I don't want any more. So
I mean, it's it's nice now when Daniel brings, or we get the baby for a minute, but we can give her back.
right, yeah. Oh, I love babies. I love being
I
around
like
babies.
to play with them and send them home.
Or the kids take care of her, so it's like I'm not changing any diapers.
Yeah. No, I love having babies over for a minute, and then
Right.
go home. Yeah, I won't ever have any more children.
I'm done.
One and done. So, I love the description of your family. I'm just like picturing in my head, like I would assume that like there's been no way around not building some sort of relationship with your child's biological mom.
So, I did all the transportation for visits when they were having visits until it was just Darius having visits. And so at that point, it's kind of hard because it was all supervised visits. And so the relationship, and actually they had visits with both of their parents, which is unusual. Their case was very unusual. They had the same judge throughout the process, the same workers. There was no turnover.
Oh, wow.
But it dragged on for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
So our relationship, I don't know, I wouldn't say it was like aggressive, but maybe amicable is a better word. So now, Rosa went to pick up the baby and made a comment that their mom had like handed her the baby and said, oh, you're kind of like her grandma too. So there is some acknowledgement of that relationship. So I wouldn't say like we're not having Thanksgiving dinner together anytime soon, but you never know.
Right. It's just, I mean, I can't imagine what her life must be like for her to have lost all of her kids. But then again, like, I would also think she'd probably feel grateful that, you've been there. So, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
interesting.
their
very
mom and
complex.
dad have their own story and they've had their own struggles, and
Sure, of
the
course.
kids are aware of some of that, and so like I learned the hard way to be respectful of like that privacy because that's their story.
Yeah.
And so I definitely was guilty of oversharing in the beginning, and that caused some like judgmental comments that made me want to smack somebody. So
Yeah.
I learned.
Interesting.
The comments that people think they're entitled to say to
Well,
adopted
I mean,
families
so
are insane.
we've heard it all as a transracial family. Now that the kids are older, they are definitely aware of. We get more looks than anything, and that's more when we're traveling. But when they were little, people, I'm sure you've heard the stories before. People feel this ownership, like they would try to pet the kids.
Yeah. I have slapped strangers' hands.
This was right around when the kids were younger and we were on trips. This was right around the time when transracial adoption, international adoption was big. You had Angelina Jolie adopting Sandra Bullock, and so we had people coming up to us. We were on one vacation. I think they were from England, asking us like what country they were from. how much they cost. And I was like, well, we're all from here. And they're like, no, no, where are they from? I said, and finally I had to be like, they were made in America.
Oh my God.
You know, things like that. I've had, well-meaning people follow me in like different stores trying to quiz me on black hair care when they were younger, and I get where they're coming from. At the same time, it's like, if my kid's hair looks better than your hair, you should probably walk away from me right now. Because I worked hard to make sure that they didn't, that they looked presentable when we were out and about, and made sure their hair was taken care of, whether it was me doing it or me finding other people to do it. We also have my wife's sister, who she relocated here to Rochester to help her from Hawaii. Her husband is black, so they have 5 children who are black, Samoan, and Japanese, but look black.
Right, so they could help and.
Right, so they help. They have their cousins here, and then his sister does hair. So now, for a while, I had the girls' hair dreadlocked because I wasn't, dealing with the crying anymore. But now they're older, so they want to do their own things. They want to buy the hair and flip it around and all of that annoying stuff. So she does their hair for us at a discount.
That's good.
So we worked hard as a family. I'm the minority in the house, and when we first moved into the neighborhood we're in, it was primarily a black neighborhood, and we did that on purpose.
Yeah, I think that's important. Something a lot of transracial adoptive parents aren't willing to do, and that's get the children into environments where they're around people
that look like that.
Yeah. I've noticed a lot of resistance in a lot of adoptive, and then it can create issues for the children.
Absolutely. And I take issue with that. Like, if anybody's going to be uncomfortable, it should be me as the parent, although I'm comfortable in most places. And I think that's coming from, growing up in New York City. In the neighborhood I grew up in, I happen to be the only white person. So while it doesn't translate to the experience of a person of color in America today, I know what it's like to be the only face in a room.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And again, I can still walk out into the larger society and sort of blend in, although with my tattoos and my hair, which is multicolored at this point, it's a little harder, but still, it's not the same thing. But I get really frustrated with colorblind parents. So I don't see color. I'm raising them not to see color. Well, they're looking in the mirror every day.
Yeah, that's such a
They
great
see what's
point.
going on in this country.
Yeah. I've had, my stepfather is white, and he's great, but I'm Hispanic, and he just tries to say that to me all the time, and has my whole life. He's been my stepfather since I was 6, so 31 years, and he just, I still look in the mirror. I still know that when I walk in a room, sometimes, like, I'm an attorney, and I walk into the courtroom that's filled with a bunch of old white men, ages 65 and older, I get looked at, and it's just, it's my reality and it's their reality. So kudos to you for recognizing that and not trying to wash over it.
It's a hard conversation to have, and I feel it for all my kids, but for my son in particular, who's 13, and now his voice is starting to change, and he's getting taller. He's going to navigate this world as a young black male. And what that means is scary. It's scary in terms of police interaction. It's scary in terms of he has ADHD. What does that mean? And it's like, I'm very conscious. I think I had him and Diamond in the car, and I was pulled over because I'd forgotten to register my car. And I'm very conscious of, showing them, you don't put your hands anywhere until somebody tells you to. And people look at me like I'm crazy when I tell them that. But it's like, you know what? Look at the news.
Right.
I want him to come home alive.
Right. It's our responsibility to prepare them for what they're going to be dealing with. And that's the reality we're in.
Right. Especially, now these days. I took them to, and this was last summer, I drove to them to Myrtle Beach by myself because I needed a break. And we were at a hotel, and this hotel happened to have like 2 different pool areas, and I was upstairs, and they're old enough now. They can kind of sort of wander around, and they know where to go, and they all have phones. And they're downstairs, and they called me. One of them called me like freaking out. This guy's calling security. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, what's going on? He said we were splashing him. So I go down there. They're the only black kids in the pool. And this white guy who's fully clothed is complaining to management because he was sitting by the edge of the pool and claimed that, the kids were splashing at him or around him. I don't even know. Meantime, there's other white kids jumping into the pool right in front of him, and he's not saying anything to them.
Oh my
So,
God,
tell me that's not about race.
Ugh, that makes me mad.
And the kids are very aware of it. So I had the luxury at that point of sort of blending into the background. And so I stood back and listened to how the staff handle it. And the staff was like, there's nothing wrong here. They're just being kids. Like, you guys need to leave.
Oh, well, that's
good.
awesome to hear.
That was absolutely refreshing. And I was really grateful for that. But I didn't want to like make a scene in front of anybody else. But this happened to be a hotel that had some kind of texting app that you can use. So I texted management. I was like whoever that staff person was, I really appreciate the way they handled this situation.
Wow, that's awesome. What a great company policy, if that's what it was, or just a great human. But
right, yeah.
That's refreshing.
But my kids are, they're very conscious of it. They're, when they were younger, I used to be like, they're looking at you because you're cute, but they know.
Right.
When we're out as a group, they know. And sometimes it can be overly positive attention. And, oh, look at what you did. It's so great that you adopted and you kept them all together. Well, we're not like animals at the zoo, or, we just wanted to create a family. So there's nothing altruistic about it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the myth, right?
It's like
the rainbows and sunshine myth about adoption, and it's all perfect and altruistic. When in reality, you're just trying to have your family.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just trying to eat some pizza or whatever and go on about our day. I get it. If people have questions about foster care or adoption that they really want to ask, I'm perfectly willing to have those conversations. But, there's that whole idea of overly positive attention, which sounds weird to say, but it's like you're doting on my kids because we're not the norm.
It almost seems fetishized. It
right.
Makes me uncomfortable
that's the word I'm
when
looking
people
for.
do it.
So it's definitely been interesting. Like, my kids are kind of careful about who they tell, like their friends about what their family looks like and that they have two moms, because they didn't ask for this as well. And it is hard because we not only are we navigating race, but we're navigating GLBTQ issues, because sometimes we don't go to church as a family. I happen to be atheist. My wife is a believer, but we're not really like church going people. There are open and affirming churches around here, but we just haven't found one where we fit in as a family. And so if they wanted to go, I would support them in that. But they've had friends who have invited them to churches, and I'm like, well, we have to go, and Google is a wonderful thing. You Google a church and it says the first thing on the first page is marriage is between one man and one woman. No, you can't go to that church with your friend.
Right.
Not because we don't want you to go to church, but because this church is going to tell you some bullshit. I hope I can curse.
Oh, you can say whatever the fuck you want.
That you don't need to hear about your family, and they get that, and then they have lost a few friends because of it, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Man.
My middle daughter, Diamond, is also currently at the point where she is like, I would say it's pretty clear she's gay. She goes back and forth, which is perfectly fine if she changed her mind at some point. But, she talked about wanting to have a baby at some point. And when I told her the natural way to have a baby is with a penis in your vagina, the face she made, I was like, well, it's pretty clear you don't want a penis anywhere near your vagina, which is fine.
Yeah.
There are other things you can do when you get older. So we're also like navigating that. There's been no issue with like support from her siblings here at the house, or, it was funny. She asked me how we would feel if she was gay. I'm like, Diamond, have you been paying attention to our family?
Right.
The things kids worry about sometimes are like really funny.
And how, you said she was 2 when she first came to live with you?
Diamond was 1, Denasia was 2. Diamond, when she first came, she wasn't talking, wasn't walking, wasn't doing any of the normal milestones a 1-year-old was doing. We suspect that whatever, and we were their 3rd placement at that point. So if you think about that trauma.
That's a lot of moving for that young.
I want to say 3rd or 4th, and depending on if you count in utero, because they were both removed from their mom immediately. Okay. So, and from there, I did a lot of work with her on like physical development, like Gymboree classes and all of that stuff. And she made strides. By the time they had somebody coming out to evaluate her, she didn't need any other supports. But it also ended up being like she was the one that became anxiously attached. And she has no memory of that at this point, which is great.
Yeah, that's great.
But it took a lot of work to get there. And so, of course, she doesn't appreciate any of it at this point, which is the way it should be. But it's still annoying as a mom.
Oh, you're not kidding,
Well, I
man.
mean,
I've been dealing with that lately.
we
and I'm
were
just like,
talking.
"Oh."
Summer and I were talking about this. The fact that you treat your kids just like any other of your adopted
My
daughter.
ungrateful daughter.
Yeah, with the fact that you get mad
Right.
at her and call her an ingrate means that she has really made it into the family.
Yeah, it's like, I hear stories about, kids or adults who were in foster care, and they say things like, oh, the family would go out to eat and we would have to have ramen at home. I'm like that. And that just pisses me off as a former foster parent.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell are you doing with these kids?
Yeah, you shouldn't have children in your home at
Right.
all if you're treating them like that. It's terrible.
Exactly. And, we always went above and beyond, not only to make sure that they looked, good when we were out together as a family, but just because they deserved that as kids.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't even know where I was going with this, but yeah.
It's okay.
But we do have, we can be somewhat inappropriate as a family. I think we were at Disney World several years ago, and one of the kids asked me for something, and I said no, and it was probably Darius, because he's a joker. He said, it's because I'm black, isn't it? And I said, yeah, and luckily the only people around us were like Japanese tourists. So they didn't know what we were saying.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I told my daughter the other day, because her hair needs to be done, and she was like out and about. We were having a party for Darius, and I said, you need to go inside because right now you look like a white girl did your hair. Which cracked everybody up around us.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the kids have taken on some of my sarcasm as well, which gets them in trouble at school.
Yes, all the time. I have gotten calls from the school.
Yeah, my daughter's picked up my sass, like, big time. So she's going to be a problem when she gets a little older.
I mean, there was an incident where my son wrote on his homework to one of his teachers something like, why are you asking me these questions? Didn't you go to college?
I mean, I think that's a reasonable question.
It's a reasonable question, but it's like, I can't, the teacher emailed me and was like, I can send you a picture of it if you want. I said, I don't need to see a picture because, it's my kid.
I've met him.
It's like, I told him I waited
like,
until high school until I made that comment. He's doing it, 7th grade. Like, dude, come on.
Are you kind of proud? I feel like I'd be kind of proud.
I cannot confirm or deny that. His sense of humor is much like mine, and even teachers in elementary school used to tell me that he has my mannerisms, that they can see myself in him, which is kind of funny because obviously there's no physical resemblance. But
Okay.
I had to warn teachers early on that not to make like sarcastic jokes in front of him at the school because he will know what you're saying.
Right.
And they came up to me, a few of them have come up to me because he was very shy in elementary school, and they said, I told the joke, and all the other kids just looked at me, and I could see Darius looking down at his paper and kind of smirking. And I said, yeah, I told you.
Yeah, makes me kind of proud of like times when Sophia smarts off to me. Like I want to be really mad at her, but it'll be like such a clever, like real quick, witty comeback that I'm like also proud.
It's so annoying.
I know, but I don't know. I think I'm gonna stick with proud. Like
a lot of times I have to laugh and I'm like,
secretly proud.
Funny, but stop it.
Yeah.
Right. And it drives Rosa crazy because she now knows what it must have been like to deal with me as a child because we've got Darius.
Oh, I love it. I love it. But you know what? Sounds like he must have quite a bit of confidence. I mean, I don't know if I had the confidence to smart off, like use my sarcasm skills quite that young. I think I waited till high school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a little too confident at times, but, I don't know. He and his sister do go to a smaller school for kids with issues like dyslexia. So I think that gives him a little more.
He feels comfortable.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely, interesting in these days and times in comparison, when they were younger, we were still getting stared at. Now there are comments and,
Right.
Not so much to us as a group, but the kids have said things to them in school like, "Oh, you're going to have to leave or whatever." We used to joke about going to live with Jen in Canada, and I'm only halfway joking. If finances weren't an issue, we would be in Canada.
Hell yeah, I tell you.
Jen wouldn't even notice.
She's
with
got
the
so many people
with
there.
the 30
Yeah.
kids she has at her house.
Now, who's this Jen character?
Jen, we had her on for an episode. I don't know if you were here yet or not.
It was early on.
Yeah, and she has, I don't know how many kids in her house.
20 kids, 30 kids.
I listened to the episode. It was before
yeah.
I joined as host, but I did listen to the episode
and
actually.
I
remember now.
A couple of her kids are grown, so there's also partners, and I know at least one of them has a couple kids, and so there's their
big old
large family has now got all the extended family too. So there is a lot of people.
I love it. I don't have hardly any family around, so I love it.
I could just drop my kids off, and she's so tired she wouldn't know.
Yeah, she's like, whatever. What's a few more? It's fine.
Right.
So, and they also have They have openness with their various families, and so
like vast openness, like beyond
with the
what
girls.
what I could even tolerate, because I don't like people in general.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, I'm pretty intolerant of people.
Right. So
y'all are all right.
I like people in small doses if they remember to text before they show up at my door.
Yeah. I mean, I have been at my house, I can't count how many times, and the doorbell's ringing. I'm sitting here, the lights are on, the TV's on loud. I just am like, no, I'm not answering the fucking door. I don't know who you are. And Sophia, my daughter, will run into the living room. I'm like, no, don't answer that door.
That's not how this works.
No, like, I know you got a bunch of friends in the neighborhood. No, if I usually let her go out there if it's a kid, but like,
oh yeah,
she's like, I don't have to talk to her.
My
kids
run wild in the neighborhood, which is good. I'd rather have them outside.
Oh yeah, our kids.
But we've had a few Jehovah's Witnesses knock on our door several times, and I'm like, no, and finally I was like, look, do you not see the rainbow flag?
Right. We're not interested. They usually don't come to my house the same group never comes to my house more than once, because I do not wear regular clothes in my house. I wear, because it's my house, damn it, and I don't have to. So I usually have on, this chemise that I wear. I have like 12 of them that all look identical. So I'm not very covered when I answer the door, and all of this entire group of people who have come to witness to me promptly turn red and basically throw their flyer at me as they run back to their car, and they never come back. I don't understand why
I don't know.
not.
Maybe I should try that.
So answer the door naked. It will, They will go away.
I like it.
Well, I mean, I have lost over 100 pounds, so.
Yes, I've been watching your Instagram. What have you been doing?
So I do. I follow the keto diet, which Jen also
Me
follows.
too. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
yes.
She got me started on it when she posted her pictures one random day. And I had just come home that was 2 years ago. I just come home from the doctor, and they wanted to put me on like a third blood pressure medication, and regular dieting wasn't working. So it's keto and weightlifting when I have the time.
Yeah, I've been doing keto. I should say I am not very strict about. Well, I hadn't been very strict about it this last 6 months probably, but I lost like 30 pounds almost immediately when I started doing it. When I finally realized it, and it felt like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to eat. Like, this feels right. I feel healthy. I don't think it's necessarily.
I still have some way to go, but I'm over 100 pounds gone.
That's incredible.
That's amazing.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. I don't know. Are you super strict about it?
So
I kind of go. Yeah,
I don't do like I'll do bits of sugar now and then, but the combination of like sugar and flour will make me sick at this point.
Yeah, I can't do baked goods. I can't do pasta. Pasta makes me very sick.
No more pasta, no more bread. And so, my kids, if they want that, they can make it for themselves. And Diamond, who's standing out here right now, will tell you that I'm starving her because I won't cook her like ramen noodles.
Yeah, no, my poor daughter, which I have fibromyalgia, and gluten really a gluten intolerance, and so carbohydrates, it just turns into sugar, which just
Right.
feeds the
Yeah.
inflammation from my fibromyalgia. So I mean, I didn't even start the keto diet to lose weight. It was because I had these terrible flare-ups, and my daughter, she's got the fibrosis in her body just like I do. So I'm already kind of training her to eat that way.
Yeah.
Just because I know she'll, feel better and healthier. I wish I would have had a parent teaching me how to eat properly when I was younger, but that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, I could go on and on about that, but for
Yeah.
me it was about health, the cholesterol and blood pressure primarily.
Yeah. Well, I would like to follow your journey. So can you tell me what your
Can't
Instagram
find
is?
it.
I've asked Summer to look for it, and she's
And I'm
failing.
useless. I'm sorry.
Well, it was public, but I made it private because my kids' friends were starting to follow it. So it is
weird.
Keto Rock Girl, ROC.
I couldn't remember. I was searching like every variation of keto or whatever I could think of, and I couldn't find it.
Well, I found it.
I
So
So
there you go.
So I will follow you and keep up with your progress. And
Yeah, I my kids are on there as well, so you can scroll through and see some of our adventures. We're actually getting ready to go to Provincetown next week for their Family Week event, which if you're not familiar with Provincetown, they have like themes throughout the summer. There's like Bear Week, which is all dudes, obviously. But Family Week, there's like, I don't want to say 500 or 600 families who are like with kids who have GLBTQ parents.
Mm-hmm.
And they do, they have programming throughout the week, and it's just, we just take over this small town, and this is our third year going. And so it's one of the few times of the year where the kids can kind of be out and about, and nobody's asking them stupid questions, and all the families kind of have similar stories. So
That's awesome.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really awesome. Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful trip. I'm going to keep following your journey. And thank you for sharing your story with us.
You can contact the podcast at brokebrokenpodcast@gmail.com. The Broken Broken Podcast can be found online at www.brokebrokenpodcast.com, on Twitter at BrokeBrokenShow, on Instagram and Facebook at Broke Broken Podcast. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube.